Hey guys, it's Christian, and today I've got something very special to show because I've recently created my own brand new tool that will help all of you guys to manage container deployments and in the future even other templates and config settings when following my video tutorials. For example, in most of my tutorials we use Docker Compose templates for deploying applications and services because it is super damn simple, it has a standardized configuration and works on nearly every machine. Some of you guys might already be familiar with the Boilerplates GitHub repository where I created and maintained a library for various types of self-hosted apps and services. And although this is absolutely fantastic, this repository now has over 6,000 stars on GitHub. It had one problem, and that was about standardization and customization. Because if you follow my video tutorials and you want to use my templates, some of you might have completely different requirements and customization settings. Like some of you use Traefik, my favorite reverse proxy, others might not. Some of you might use single sign-on with Authentik. No matter how good this video tutorial and the template is, it still requires a lot of manual effort. Until now, because the Boilerplates version 2 introduces a brand new CLI tool that I've written in Python, which makes Docker Compose templates easy and straightforward. You can use the Boilerplate CLI tool to create templates and config settings for all sorts of applications you see in my videos, and you can interactively configure all of the important settings, including smart pre-configured settings for Traefik, Authentik, external or internal databases, application-specific values. And the best is, this tool is completely free and open source as part of the Boilerplates community project. So I'm very proud and happy to show it to you today. But before we do that, I quickly want to talk about my other absolute favorite tool for remote access that is called TwinGate, the sponsor of today's video, because TwinGate is always my first choice when I need to log in to my home servers from SSH, or if I want to access all of my administrative tools, because it provides a secure, fast and simple solution for that. It is what we call ZTNA in tech, a zero trust network access platform that establishes secure connections between all of your devices, and they always have to be verified and authorized, otherwise TwinGate won't let the request go through your network. And this technology even works through NAT devices and firewalls without any port forwarding or other firewall exceptions required. You can just securely log into all your configured devices and services no matter where you are and where you're connecting from. If you would like to try out TwinGate, then check out my tutorials on how to install it and how to integrate it into your Docker, Kubernetes or DevOps environment. It is super cool and completely free for up to 5 users and connects to 10 different remote networks. So start making your homelet more secure and accessible with TwinGate. Of course, I will drop you a link to their website in the description down below. Alright guys, so now let's have a look at the new Boilerplates repository version 2. I've already merged all of the important changes into the main branch. It is still a pretty early version, so you can see there is a release version 0.04 that I just published yesterday, and I'm almost weekly adding new changes and things that I want to improve. I'm also really eager to hear your feedback, and whenever you encounter any issues, problems, or you have other feature requests for this tool, then please raise an issue here in this GitHub repository. You can just click on issue and then create a new one. Describe what you need. I'm already working on many items here that I've already planned for future upgrades. But yeah, let's go back to the main view. First of all, I want to show you how to install this. So I've added some documentation about the CLI tool, what it is, and what are the key features, like a quick setup of templates and config settings. It's fully customizable with smart values, and I carefully maintain these templates to update to the latest versions of the application. And you can just simply install the Boilerplate CLI tool with a simple bash script. Just copy this here. I'm going to start a new small virtual Linux machine so I can show you how this tool works. So just hit enter, and then it's going to download the latest version. It installs a few dependencies and requirements. Like, this tool is written in Python and uses the Python package manager to install this as a system-wide tool. So once this is done, you can just execute the Boilerplates command in your CLI. Currently, there are only 2 available commands in here that also have subcommands, of course, but there will be more things added in the future. And there are also some general parameters like lock level. If that's probably not interesting for you guys, but I might need to troubleshoot a few things, so adjust the lock level. You can also install the completion so in your current shell, so that will allow you to have auto completion for some of the commands here. And of course, you can check the current version that is installed. If you need to install a new version, so if you see there is a new release in here and you just want to upgrade, then just execute the same installation command. Again, it will override the existing tool to update to the latest version. Now, once you have this tool, the very first thing that you should always do is synchronize the latest changes of the library. Because as you might have noticed, I've restructured this entire Git repository to have the CLI directory where the source code of this Python script is located. There is the installation script, some testing, and GitHub Actions for the release stuff. Don't bother with that. But if you want to take a look at the libraries, so the actual boilerplates, you can take a look at the library directory. Currently, I only have one subdirectory for the compose module. So there are only Docker compose templates in here. And some of them I've not activated yet because it's still work in progress. So some of them might have a draft setting, so you will not see every item in here. And when I make updates or enable new templates or boilerplates, you will always have to synchronize the latest changes because it's basically doing a git clone into your personal directory where the library is located. You can list the current repositories that are installed. By default, you should have only one repository that is set to my GitHub repo. The directory is the library, and it's not synchronized yet. So the very first thing that we need to do is to do an update, repo update, that you will always have to do to download the latest changes. By the way, currently it doesn't have a sophisticated multi-repository support, but in the future, I'm planning to add a functionality so you can add your own boilerplates repository if you want. How you use these boilerplates, you can just use the compose command. So that is currently the only module that is there. In the future, I will add Ansible, Terraform, Packer, Kubernetes, just like compose as a subcommand. And each of these modules should have some general commands like list to list out all of the templates. We can just execute this here, for example. So here you see a table of the available templates. As I said, not every template is enabled yet. But if you check in a few days, I'll probably add more to this here. You can also search for something in here with a search command. If you want to search for Git, for example, that will show you Git and GitLab that are both templates existing. You also see the version of the application and also what is the library this is coming from. Again, multi-library is a feature that is work in progress, okay? If you want to see or inspect some of the details of the templates, you can just use the boilerplates compose show command. So for example, if you want to inspect the Portainer template that I've created, you can see there is a description of what this application template is about and what it does. There is a link to the project website, to the documentation, and if it has a source code, to the Git repository. And it also has a template file structure because some templates might have additional configuration files that can be pre-created with certain values. And these values are set by the template variables. So there are some standardized variables that always exist in the same way for these templates. Like for the compose module, there will be a service name that is by default set to the ID of the template. There is a container name that you can customize. There is a container time zone in this example, and some other settings like port exposure. Like this template requires 3 ports to be exposed, but there are also some disabled settings, so they are not enabled by default. If you want to connect this compose stack to a different Docker network, you could enable this in here and set the network name, and if it's an external created network or if it should be managed by this compose template. And there are also some settings for other applications like Traefik, which is currently disabled because because I don't know if everybody uses Traefik. But if you want to use Traefik as a reverse proxy that manages trusted TLS certificates, and you already have configured that on your server, you can use the boilerplates to create a compose template for Portainer that already has the required labels and settings. And you can, of course, customize these values here as well. Now, this is just showing everything. If you want to generate a boilerplate like this Portainer compose project, you can use the compose generate command. So let's do this right now. It will ask you if you want to customize any of these settings here. If you say no, it will just generate the template file structure with all of these variables you see here. But if you want to change something, just say yes, and it will interactively ask you for each of the enabled section if you want to customize values in here. So if you are okay with the currently configured value, just hit enter and it will use the default value. But if you want to change the container name, for example, to something else, you can just type in the name or the values and it will override the default template values. Like the time zone, I want to set to Europe Berlin here. The container restart policy is okay, but you could also set these other values in here if you want. And maybe I don't want to expose the ports because I want to use Traefik as my reverse proxy, so I don't need to enable the ports here. So I just say no. And this will then skip all of the other questions and directly go to the next section. Network, no, I don't need network because I want to connect this to the Traefik Docker network. So when we come to the Traefik section, I want to say yes. And now I can specify the Traefik network name. So in my case, I have connected my Traefik Docker container to the network proxy. So I just type in this name. And I want to create a new domain like Portainer, Portainer.local. This is just my local test device, for example, yeah. And the HTTP entry point web is fine, that's okay. Now I can say if I want to enable TLS for Traefik with certificate management, if I've configured a certificate resolver, I would say yes, okay, let's do this. Web secure certificate resolver is Cloudflare, that's correct in my case. And now I'm finished with all of the customizations. I can just confirm if the boilerplate CLI tool should write the files to the folders. You can see that it always will create a new folder that is the same as the template ID. I'll just say yes, the template was generated successfully, and let's go into this directory. You can see the compose file here. And that's the file that has been generated. So you can see the container name was set to my custom value. It uses the actual version of the template that is managed by my library. And it set the time zone. It also automatically set necessary things like volumes with reasonable default values. The Traefik labels are configured just like I described it. Now, of course, you can still customize these settings here if you want. Yeah, you don't have to use the template as it is, but it should give you a much better starting point instead of writing this or copying this from the official documentation or creating this from scratch. You can very quickly and easily create these type of deployment templates. And of course, whenever I make a future video tutorial, there I will use the tool so you can directly follow this, but you can enable or disable certain sections that might apply to your environment and not to mine. So I think this is really, really practical. Now, I want to show you some advanced features of the Boilerplate CLI tool, because some of you might think, okay, so this interactive mode might be a bit too slow and I don't want to always have to define these variables. Now, you can, of course, also use the Boilerplates tool and set some specific variables. First of all, you can change the directory. So I want to create a new template in Portainer 2. And I already know that I want to enable Traefik, for example. So I can just use the variable ports enabled false and a variable Traefik enabled true. And when I hit enter, you can see that these default values are overwritten by the CLI parameters in here. So it already enabled Traefik and Traefik TLS, it disabled the ports, and you can still customize these settings if you want. Let me show you Alloy. That is a bit more complicated application. That is the open telemetry collector that gathers like process logs, metrics, traces, and stuff like that. I already made a tutorial about that, so if you want to check it out, I will drop you a link in the description. But as you can see, this template doesn't just create a compose.yaml file, it also creates a config.alloy file with pre-configured settings depending on what sections you enable or disable. So let us go through some of the settings here. Like the service name and the container name is okay, but the host name, this requires a different setting. And this is needed because when Alloy runs in a container, it doesn't know the host name of the Docker host. So you can see some of the variables have template-specific explanations that will help you to understand what this is actually for. Like the host name, I want to set to server prod1, so where this thing is running on. Yeah, the restart policy, that's fine. And ports enabled, yeah, okay, let's enable the Alloy HTTP server port, that's okay. I don't want to connect this to a different network. I don't want to enable Traefik, so there we don't need it. But this section now is interesting. So this will configure log collection for Docker containers and system logs. Now here you can enable some pre-configured sections in the Alloy configuration file. Like configure log collection for Docker and containers, I will say yes. Now I can set the low-key endpoint, so where to send these logs to. Like in my Alloy tutorial, we used Grafana low-key as a destination for sending the logs, so you can specify this address if you need to. Then you can specifically enable only Docker container log collection, I want to say yes, and system and journal CTL log collection for Ubuntu. So these are the values that are currently configured. Of course, we might want to add other settings and other pre-configured config settings. If you have some suggestions, just let me know in the GitHub repository. And yes, we also want to collect metrics and send these to the Prometheus endpoint, and also enable this for Docker and for the system node. So this will use Node Exporter and the Catvisor plugin in Alloy. Okay, so these are the files that will be generated. Let's confirm this. And then let's go into this Alloy directory. Here you can see the compose file that has been generated. Very, very simple. It will enable some of the commands to run the HTTP server, set the storage path, the port exposure, and all of the volume settings that are required to collect system logs and metrics from the actual host where this container is running on. And if I say config Alloy, you can see that this is also pre-configured. So everything that you've learned from my tutorial, everything that I've explained in my tutorial on how to collect logs and send logs to Prometheus and Loki is pre-configured here. And depending on what settings you enabled or disabled, some of the sections might be added and some others not. And still, you can, of course, customize everything in here if you want. It's not directly deployed somewhere, which is, by the way, a feature that I'm currently thinking about. Yeah, it could also be nice. But as it is right now, this tool will only create the necessary files, but you will still have to go into the directories, for example, Portainer, and say docker compose up command. Yeah. So I'm not going to do this right now because I want to show you something else. For example, custom default values. Because some of you might find that annoying that you always have to go through all of the variables when you have some settings that always are the same. For example, on my environment, I nearly always want to use Traefik, yeah? Only in very few occurrences, I don't want to use it. And maybe the Traefik network name that you used on your environment is not the same as in mine. For example, let's take a look at the Authentik boilerplate. So that has a lot of variables. Some of them are required. By the way, this is another section I later we'll talk about. There are some secret values. Now, there is a command that is called defaults. And in here, you can add default values that will be stored in your personal directory on the device where the CLI tool is running on. So you can say default set Traefik enabled true. And you can say Traefik network proxy, that's the network name. And of course, I also want to set container time zone to Europe, Berlin. So I don't always have to customize the UTC time zone. Now, if you want to see all your current default values, you can just say defaults list. This will show you the configuration settings. And you can, of course, also use clear, remove, get the values from specific item and so on. And now if I execute show Authentik again, you can see that some of the default values in here have a small arrow. And so that means these values from the template will be overwritten with your own custom config. So here you can see that it automatically enables Traefik, and it enables Traefik TLS because that's default, which requires Traefik. So yeah, I needed to program a lot of different logics and stuff like that. It's kind of complicated. But I think with this logic, it works the most intuitive and the most reasonable way. So you can see these values will be customized. Of course, when I generate the template, you can still change them, but they will be preloaded with these values every time you create a template that has these variables. And I will also show you what will happen to these auto-generated secrets here. As you can see, this template file structure also includes two environment variable files, .env authentic, .env postgres. By the way, I'm also working on a section called Swarm. So when you're using Docker Swarm, the secrets will then be handled differently than when you're using Docker Compose. But for now, every secret that has this little key icon here will be treated as sensitive inside the tool, and it will be usually stored in an environment variable with an auto-generated value. You can still add your own custom secret, of course, if you want, but by default, it will generate a random string. Okay, so let's try this. Let's generate Authentik. I want to customize the settings. Oh yeah, why not? Let's go through this one by one. Service name is fine. The time zone you can see is the default value that I've overwritten with my custom value. That's fine. The database, now I can specify if I want to connect to an external database. So if I have a Postgres or a MySQL server somewhere running, I don't want to create a new database container inside the Compose stack. So it's basically up to you if you want the template to include a template for a database server. I would say no, because I want to show you how that's working. Database name Authentik, yeah, that's fine. Now I can create a password. I can add a random string, so it will not be shown in here, of course, because it's a sensitive item. But if I just hit enter, it will auto-generate one. Error reporting, no. The secret key is also, that will be used for cookie signing and unique user IDs inside Authentik. I'll just say auto-generate, that's fine. And no, I don't want to enable the ports because I want to use Traefik. The Traefik name is proxy, as I defined before. And yeah, let's just go with the default values. I just want to show what's happening. And yeah, let's generate these files. So this template also includes something else, which is called the next steps. So I will try to add them to as many templates as I can. And there is one thing that I'm currently not really sure about how I will handle this, because sometimes some templates will have some initial user passwords or something like this. Yeah, if you want to log into the web interface and you need to enter the password, I think it would be straightforward to show it here in the next steps. But in case of a secret key and a database password, I'm not really sure. But you can tell me your opinion either in the Git repository by raising an issue, or tell me on Discord or in YouTube comments. You know how to contact me, I hope. Depending on what application it is, we can decide what we want to do. But yeah, just to show you, there are some next steps that might be included in a template that you can follow. As you can see here, that's the Compose file. And because I said I don't want to use an external database server, it will also create a new container, Authentik Postgres, with a Postgres database in the version that the application requires. Authentik also includes a Redis database that I've not made optional because I think it's always required. Theoretically, we could also add variables for this, but I think when we make it too much, it becomes more complicated. So I want to find some balance between simplicity but high customization. And this is not really easy in some templates and applications for sure. But this is the way how I treat it. So external databases might be useful or not. Redis configurations, that's something you could do by hand if you want to remove this, yeah. But it has two services, an Authentik worker and an Authentik server, and these include the environment files that contain the secrets. Now, if I say lsla, you can see them, because it's just a test. It is not really important if I show this to you, but here you can see the secret value that was auto-generated. You can see the database connection strings and some other variables that are required. So yeah, that's the tool as it is today. Again, there will be many changes in the future. I will add Terraform, Kubernetes, and probably also Packer, Ansible, whatever. We will see how the tool evolves, and it also depends a little if you use it or not. Of course, I will use this in most of my future videos if we cover some other applications that we didn't cover before. I will use this tool to quickly generate a template you can easily follow in this video. And by the way, if you want to contribute to this, I'm also happy about any help from you guys as a community. If you want to create or work on some of these issues and pull requests, of course, we need to discuss it on Discord or here with comments, but feel free to help out if you want. If you're a Python programmer and you want to dive deeper into the actual architecture of this program, just have a look at the agents.md file. That also should be a hint that I used a little help from AI to write this tool. But this is all the context that is required by AI agents to continue working on this. And it will also help you to understand a bit better how I've created this tool and what are the different components if you want to take a closer look at the source code. All right, but yeah, that's it for today. I let you go and let you play with this. I hope you like it. And of course, I'm going to catch you in the next video. Thank you so much for your support. If you want to sponsor this project, here is also a link to my Patreon, or you can become a YouTube member. That's also a huge help. Thank you so much for all the people already doing this. I think this is a great opportunity to create a huge and interesting and exciting community project. So you're here. I'm really thrilled about that. Okay, guys. So have a nice day, and I see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.